I never imagined my 32nd birthday would end with an eviction notice, but I guess life has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I had spent the entire morning decorating my small apartment with streamers and balloons, hoping this year would be different. The vanilla cake from my favorite bakery sat on the kitchen counter, 32 candles neatly arranged but still unlit. I smoothed down my blue dress, the one Mom had given me before she passed away, and checked my phone again. No calls from Dad or my siblings yet, but it was still early. The knock on the door startled me, and for a brief moment, joy bubbled up inside me. Maybe they were surprising me this year. I hurried to open it, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in weeks. There stood my father, Robert Mitchell, his tall frame filling the doorway, but lacking the warm smile I'd been hoping for. Instead, his face was a mask of business-like indifference, the same expression he'd worn at corporate meetings for as long as I could remember. "Sarah," he said with a nod, not even acknowledging the festive decorations or the special day. "I need to talk to you about something important." The familiar knot of disappointment formed in my stomach as I stepped aside to let him in. He didn't even take off his coat, a clear sign he wasn't planning to stay long. I noticed he was clutching a white envelope in his hand, gripping it so tightly his knuckles had turned white. "Would you like some coffee, Dad? Or cake?" "I just picked it up this morning," I offered, desperately trying to inject some birthday warmth into his unexpected visit. He shook his head, placing the envelope on my kitchen counter, right next to the birthday cake with its unlit candles. "This is a formal notice," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You have 30 days to vacate this apartment." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "What? Dad, what are you talking about? This is my apartment." He cleared his throat, looking everywhere but at me. "Actually, it's still part of the family property. Holdings. Vanessa and I have decided we need it for Mark. He's moving back home next month." Vanessa, of course. My father's girlfriend of 2 years, who had somehow managed to insert herself into every family decision since she arrived. "On my birthday? You're evicting me on my birthday?" My voice cracked as I fought back tears. He finally met my eyes, but there was no remorse there, just cold determination. "The timing is unfortunate, but business is business, Sarah. You have a good job now. You can find another place." I stood there, balloon strings tangled around my fingers, wearing the dress my dead mother had given me, being evicted by my own father on my birthday. The surreal nature of the moment wasn't lost on me. As he turned to leave without so much as a happy birthday, a strange calm settled over me. Little did my father know that 6 months ago, when his business was failing, and he was about to lose our family home, I had quietly stepped in. The mortgage that he thought he'd refinance through a helpful bank manager was actually transferred into my name. I had been making the payments ever since, saving the house he was now so cavalierly using as a bargaining chip. The house that contained every memory of my mother. The house I legally owned. As the door closed behind him, I looked down at the eviction notice, then back at my birthday cake. "Well," I whispered to the empty room, "this certainly isn't how I expected to blow out my candles this year." What started as tears of hurt slowly transformed into something else entirely. Sometimes the best birthday gifts are the ones you never expected. And as I carefully folded the eviction notice and placed it in my purse, I realized I had been handed the perfect opportunity to finally stand up for myself. To understand why my father's betrayal cut so deep, you need to understand where we came from. The Mitchell family home was a modest 2-story colonial in a respectable neighborhood, nothing fancy but filled with memories. I grew up watching my mother, Elizabeth, turn that house into a home with her careful touches, the garden she meticulously maintained, the kitchen where she taught me to bake, the living room where we gathered for game nights every Friday. When she was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, I was 16, Mark was 11, and Amy was just 8. The following 8 months transformed our family forever. I still remember the day Mom called me into her bedroom, her once vibrant face gaunt and pale against the pillows. "Sarah," she whispered, taking my hand in hers. "I need you to promise me something." I nodded, fighting back tears as I squeezed her frail fingers. "Look after them all. Your father doesn't know how to show his feelings, but he'll need you. And the little ones, they'll need their big sister." I promised her without hesitation, not fully understanding the weight of the commitment I was making. After she passed, Dad retreated into his work, leaving early and returning late. He wasn't cruel or abusive, just absent, both physically and emotionally. So at 16, while my friends were worrying about prom dates and college applications, I was figuring out how to help Mark with his math homework, braid Amy's hair for school, prepare dinners, and keep the household running. My own college. Plans got postponed indefinitely. Dad's accounting firm was struggling without Mom's administrative support, and our finances were tight. "Just for a year," Dad had said when I suggested taking classes at the local community college while working part-time. "Just until I get the business back on track." That year turned into 3, then 5. I worked as a receptionist at Dad's firm during the day and waited tables at night, funneling most of my earnings back into the household. The first real betrayal came when I was 21. I had been saving diligently, tucking away tips and bonuses for my long-delayed education. The college fund my parents had started for me had remained untouched since Mom's death, and I planned to finally use it. But when I went to access the account, I discovered it was empty. Dad had withdrawn it all 6 months earlier. When confronted, he looked genuinely surprised at my distress. "I needed capital to expand the firm," he explained. "I thought you understood that your job there was your future now." I didn't argue. Instead, I swallowed my disappointment and started saving again from scratch. Meanwhile, I became even more determined to make sure Mark and Amy wouldn't face the same setbacks. I helped Mark with college applications and drove Amy to dance recitals. I maintained Mom's garden and kept her recipes alive. I dated occasionally, but most relationships fizzled quickly. Few men my age understood why family obligations always came first. Through it all, I told myself that Dad appreciated my sacrifices, even if he rarely acknowledged them. Despite everything, I eventually earned my accounting degree through night classes, working full-time throughout. The day I received my diploma, Dad attended the ceremony but left early for a client meeting. Mark and Amy cheered loudly enough to make up for his absence, and I convinced myself that was enough. Looking back now, I can see I was desperately trying to hold on to the family Mom had left behind, even as it was slowly slipping through my fingers. That house represented everything: Mom's memory, my sacrifices, our history. It never occurred to me that one day I would need to fight for my place within its walls. But as I sat in my soon-to-be former apartment the day after my disastrous birthday, surrounded by deflating balloons and untouched cake, I realized I had been slowly evicted from the family for years. This latest notice was just making it official. With my accounting degree finally in hand, my career took an unexpected upward trajectory. Henderson Financial, a mid-sized firm specializing in investment management, hired me initially for an entry-level position. But after I identified a significant tax-saving opportunity during my first month, they fast-tracked my advancement. By my 30th birthday, I was managing my own portfolio of clients and making more money than I ever thought possible. Financial literacy became my superpower, understanding the complex language of money that had always intimidated my father. This knowledge gap between us created an unspoken tension. Each Sunday dinner at the family home became an exercise in restraint, as Dad would incorrectly explain financial concepts to Mark and Amy. "The stock market is nothing but gambling," he'd declare with authority, while I silently calculated the compound interest growth of my diversified portfolio. The second betrayal came when Amy was preparing for graduate school. She needed a co-signer for her student loans, and I had immediately offered, knowing my credit score and income would secure her an excellent rate. 3 days before the signing, Amy called me confused. "Dad says he's taking care of my loans. He told me you offered, but that I should go with him since he has more experience." I was stunned. Not only had my father taken credit for solving a problem I had already addressed, but he'd undermined my capability in Amy's eyes. When confronted, he brushed it off. "I was just trying to help. You're always so busy with work." His dismissal stung, but I let it go for family harmony. Family gatherings grew increasingly uncomfortable after that. Where I once felt essential, I now felt peripheral. At holiday meals, I'd find myself assigned to the far end of the table, away from the main conversations. Photos were taken when I was in the kitchen. Plans were finalized before I was consulted. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Then Vanessa entered the picture. At 45, she was closer to Dad's age than mine, with sleek blonde hair always styled perfectly and a wardrobe that screamed aspiration rather than achievement. She worked in commercial real estate and met Dad while helping him scout locations for a satellite office that never materialized. From our first meeting, I sensed her wariness toward me. Behind her practiced smile, her eyes assessed me like competition rather than potential family. Her attitude toward Mark and Amy was different. Warm, indulgent, almost motherly, despite being barely 13 years older than me. The third betrayal blindsided me completely. I discovered through Amy's Instagram that the entire family, Dad, Vanessa, Mark, and Amy, had taken a week-long vacation to Florida. I hadn't been invited or even informed. When they returned, sunburned and full of inside jokes, Dad seemed genuinely surprised by my hurt. "We didn't think you could get away from work," he explained weakly. "And it was last minute. Vanessa found a deal we couldn't pass up." The exclusion hurt more than I could express, but still, I persisted in trying to maintain our family bonds. Then came the financial troubles at Dad's firm. Over dinner one evening, he mentioned casually that business had been a bit slow lately. My financial instincts went on alert. After some gentle probing, the truth emerged. Dad's firm was hemorrhaging clients to younger, more tech-savvy competitors. The mortgage on our family home, which had been refinanced multiple times to fund business expenses, was 3 months behind. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "I could have helped with the business model, looked at the books." His expression hardened. "I don't need my daughter telling me how to run the business I built before she was born." Pride. It always came down to pride. Despite his resistance, I offered to help with the mortgage payments. "Just until you get back on your feet," I insisted. "I'm doing well now, and it's the least I can do after everything." Reluctantly, he accepted, though I could see it pained him. What he didn't know was that I had looked into the mortgage situation on my own and discovered it was far worse than he'd admitted. The bank was weeks away from foreclosure proceedings. As I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the image of strangers living in our family home, of Mom's garden being torn out, of all those memories being erased. That was when I first got the idea that would eventually lead to my current situation. The idea that would change everything 6 months later when my father handed me an eviction notice on my 32nd birthday. The call from Granite National Bank came on a Tuesday afternoon as I was finalizing a client's retirement portfolio. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Brenda Hayes from the mortgage department. I'm calling about the Mitchell property on Oak Street. We've been trying to reach Robert Mitchell regarding the delinquent payments, but our calls haven't been returned." My stomach dropped. Despite my offer to help with payments, Dad had apparently continued to ignore the problem. "I'm his daughter," I explained. "I'm aware of the situation. How bad is it?" The news was worse than I'd feared. The house was not 3 months behind as Dad had claimed, but 7. Foreclosure proceedings would begin in less than 2 weeks. After a sleepless night weighing my options, I called the bank back and asked about possible solutions. "Well," Brenda said hesitantly, "given your father's current financial situation and credit score, refinancing with him as the primary holder isn't an option." She paused. "However, if someone with stronger financial credentials were to take over the mortgage..." The suggestion hung in the air. I knew what she was implying, and I knew it was probably the only way to save our family home. "What would that process look like?" I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork, credit checks, and secret meetings with bank officials. I never told Dad what I was doing. Instead, I created a story about helping him negotiate with the bank for better terms. In reality, I was transferring the mortgage entirely into my name, using my savings for the down payment to bring the loan current, and committing myself to monthly payments that, while manageable with my salary, would significantly impact my own financial goals. The loan officer seemed puzzled, when I insisted that my father shouldn't be informed about the true nature of the arrangement. Usually, families are transparent about these matters, he noted with raised eyebrows. I smiled tightly. My father is very proud. This arrangement allows him to save face while I help behind the scenes. What I didn't say was that I feared if Dad knew I owned the house, his pride would never allow him to accept the help. Instead, I created a fictional story about a special bank program for struggling business owners that had forgiven some of the debt and restructured the payments. Dad accepted this explanation with suspicious ease, perhaps because he wanted to believe it. The financial sacrifice was substantial. I had been saving for my own home, planning to move out of the small apartment Dad had allowed me to use rent-free, a fact he never failed to mention when he needed something from me. Now, those savings were gone, and my monthly budget was stretched, thin by mortgage payments on a house I didn't even live in. But it was worth it to preserve our family home, Mom's memory, and Dad's dignity. Or so I thought. The fourth betrayal came just 2 months after I'd secretly taken over the mortgage. I drove over one Sunday to find a construction crew tearing out the kitchen where Mom had taught me to cook, where her handwritten measurements were still penciled on the inside of a cabinet door. "What's happening?" I asked, trying to keep the panic from my voice as I watched strangers dismantling our history. Dad beamed proudly. "Vanessa found an amazing contractor. We're modernizing the whole first floor. Wait until you see the plans." No one had consulted me. No one had even warned me. Vanessa emerged from the backyard, sunglasses perched on her head. "Sarah, what a surprise. Don't worry, we saved your mother's old china cabinet. Everything else was so dated, though." I stood amid the destruction of my childhood memories, knowing that I was paying for this renovation I hadn't approved, watching my mother's touches being erased room by room. That evening, I called a family lawyer friend for advice. "Let me get this straight," Jordan said after I explained the situation. "You own the mortgage, but your name isn't on the deed?" I confirmed this was the case. "Technically, your father owns the property, but you own the debt secured by it. If he defaults on payments to you, you could foreclose, but otherwise, he can legally do whatever he wants with the property." The information left me feeling hollow. In my rush to save the house, I had left myself vulnerable. The call with Jordan prompted me to dig deeper into Dad's finances, something I should have done before taking over the mortgage. What I discovered shocked me. The business wasn't just struggling, it was failing. Dad had been using personal credit cards to pay business expenses for over a year. More disturbing was evidence that Vanessa, with her real estate connections, had been pushing him to consider selling the family home. According to emails I shouldn't have had access to but did through our shared family accountant, they had already discussed listing prices with realtors. They were planning to sell the house I was now paying for, without telling me. Meanwhile, Vanessa's influence continued to grow. She had moved into the family home 6 months ago, bringing her minimalist, aesthetic and ruthless efficiency. Family photos were relocated to closets and drawers. Mom's garden was replaced with low-maintenance landscaping. Traditional Sunday dinners became catered affairs when they happened at all. As my birthday approached, I found myself hoping that the day might bring some reconnection. Perhaps turning 32 would somehow reset our family dynamic. I planned a small celebration at my apartment, sending invitations to Dad, Vanessa, Mark, and Amy 3 weeks in advance. I requested an afternoon off work, bought a new dress, and ordered a cake from Mom's favorite bakery. I even pulled out Mom's old recipe box and made her famous punch, the one that had been present at every Mitchell celebration for as long as I could remember. As I arranged streamers and balloons the morning of my birthday, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today I would feel like I belonged in my own family again. I was so focused on that hope that I never imagined what was actually coming. Not just another disappointment, but a complete betrayal that would force me to make the hardest decision of my life. My 32nd birthday dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect spring day that Mom would have called a gift from above. I woke early, excited despite years of conditioning that should have taught me to expect disappointment when it came to family celebrations. This year would be different, I told myself as I showered and applied makeup with extra care. The dress I chose had been my mother's favorite on me, a simple blue A-line that brought out the color in my eyes. "You look just like I did at your age, she'd told me once when I wore it. Those words had always felt like the highest compliment. By 9, my apartment was transformed with streamers and balloons in shades of blue and silver. The cake waited in its box on the counter, 32 candles carefully arranged but not yet lit. Mom's punch recipe had come out perfectly, the floating rings of pineapple and cherries bringing back memories of birthdays long past. My phone pinged with birthday messages from colleagues and friends. Taylor, my best friend since college, called early. "Happy birthday, beautiful. Are you ready for dinner tonight? I've got reservations at that new place on Main you've been wanting to try." I confirmed our plans while scanning my call log for any missed calls from Dad, Mark, or Amy. Nothing yet, but it was still morning. Mark had classes until noon, and Amy was probably busy with her internship. Dad wasn't an early caller on the best of days. By noon, I'd received flowers from my team at work and a singing telegram arranged by my assistant. The card attached read, "Couldn't let the day pass without some embarrassment. Happy birthday from all of us who appreciate you every day." The sentiment warmed me, but I still found myself checking my phone every few minutes. At 2 o'clock, just as I was considering calling Dad myself, there was a knock at the door. My heart leapt. Maybe they were surprising me after all. I smoothed my dress and hurried to answer, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in weeks. There stood my father, looking oddly formal in a business suit despite it being Saturday. No gift in his hands, no warm smile, just a stiff nod and a white envelope clutched tightly enough to crease the paper. "Sarah," he said, not even acknowledging the decorations or the special day. "I need to discuss something important with you." The familiar knot of disappointment formed in my stomach as I stepped aside to let him in. He didn't even take off his coat, a clear sign this wasn't a social visit. He barely glanced at the festive decorations, his eyes skimming over the birthday setup without acknowledgement. "Would you like some punch, Dad? Or cake?" "I made Mom's recipe," I offered, desperately trying to inject some birthday warmth into this increasingly uncomfortable encounter. He shook his head, placing the envelope on my kitchen counter, right next to my untouched birthday cake. "This is a formal notice," he said, his voice businesslike and cool. "You have 30 days to vacate this apartment." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "What?" "Dad, what are you talking about? This is my apartment." He cleared his throat, looking everywhere but at me. "Actually, it's still part of the family property holdings. Vanessa and I have decided we need it for Mark. He's moving back after graduation next month." I felt like I'd been slapped. "On my birthday? You're evicting me on my birthday?" My voice cracked slightly as I fought to maintain composure. He finally met my eyes. But there was no remorse there, just cold determination. "The timing is unfortunate, but business is business, Sarah. You have a good job now. You can find another place." As if the eviction notice wasn't shocking enough, he continued with what felt like a rehearsed speech. "Also, I wanted to let you know personally before you hear it elsewhere. We've decided to sell the house." The room seemed to tilt. Sell the house, our family home, without even discussing it with me? My voice had risen despite my best efforts to stay calm. Dad's expression hardened. "Vanessa has an opportunity to open her own real estate office. We need the capital. The market's hot right now, and the old place is worth considerably more than I paid for it." The casual way he referred to our family home, the old place, felt like another slap. That old place contained every memory I had of my mother. It held the marks on the wall tracking our growth, the garden she had lovingly tended, the rooms where I had essentially raised Mark and Amy after she died. And it was the house I had secretly saved and was still paying for. But what about Mom? What about all our memories there? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Dad's expression softened fractionally, the first hint of humanity he'd shown since arriving. "Sarah, your mother has been gone for 16 years. Life moves on. We can't keep a house out of sentiment." His momentary softness vanished as he checked his watch. "I have another appointment. The details are all in the letter." 30 days, Sarah. I'm sure with your financial acumen, finding a new place won't be difficult. As he turned to leave without so much as a happy birthday, I was seized by a sudden doubt that had plagued me for years. Dad, I called after him, my voice barely above a whisper. Did I do something wrong? Something to make you not care about me the way you care about Mark and Amy? He paused at the door, his back still to me. For a moment, I thought he might turn around, might finally address the distance that had grown between us. But he simply adjusted his coat and said, "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. This isn't personal. It's just practical." And then he was gone, leaving me standing alone in an apartment decorated for a celebration that would never happen, holding an eviction notice instead of a birthday card. I sank down onto my couch, still in my mother's favorite dress, surrounded by cheerful decorations that now seemed to mock me. The tears came slowly at first, then in heaving sobs that left me gasping for breath. Not just for the eviction or the plan to sell our home, but for years of feeling invisible in my own family, for sacrifices unacknowledged and loyalty unrewarded. As the tears subsided, I found myself moving to my home office on autopilot. In the bottom drawer of my desk, locked away from casual discovery, was a folder containing all the documentation of my secret arrangement with the bank, the mortgage transfer, the payment records, the legal ownership that Dad knew nothing about. As I spread the papers across my desk, a strange calm began to replace the hurt. For years, I had allowed my father to dictate the terms of our relationship. I had accepted scraps of attention and convinced myself it was a feast. I had compromised and sacrificed, always putting family first, even when family increasingly didn't include me. But as I looked at the mortgage documents bearing my name, I realized I finally held the power to change our dynamic. Dad and Vanessa couldn't sell a house that was legally bound to a mortgage in my name. They couldn't dismiss me anymore. For once, they would have to acknowledge my existence and my importance. The question was, after a lifetime of putting everyone else first, did I have the courage to finally stand up for myself? I spent the remainder of my birthday in a state of emotional turbulence. Anger, hurt, vindication, and guilt crashed through me in waves. I canceled dinner with Taylor, unable to face even my closest friend while I was so raw. Instead, I sat on my living room floor surrounded by deflating balloons, sipping wine directly from the bottle, and staring at the mortgage documents spread before me. The power I suddenly realized I held was intoxicating after years of powerlessness. I could stop the sale of our family home with a single phone call. I could force my father to acknowledge my existence, my contributions, my place in the family. I could even, if I wanted to push it that far, evict him and Vanessa from the house I was paying for. The vengeful scenarios played out in my mind. Dad and Vanessa scrambling to find housing with the same 30-day notice they'd given me. The shock on their faces when they realized I'd been the one keeping the roof over their heads all these months. The public embarrassment for Vanessa when her real estate colleagues learned she hadn't even known who held the mortgage on her own home. Around midnight, my phone rang. It was Taylor, concerned when I'd ghosted our dinner plans. "Sarah? Are you okay? I've been worried sick." Her familiar voice broke through my revenge fantasies, bringing me back to reality. I poured out the whole story, the eviction notice, the plan to sell our family home, the secret mortgage arrangement, and my newfound power. Taylor listened without interrupting, a skill I'd always appreciated in her. When I finished, expecting encouragement for my revenge plans, she was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah," she finally said, her voice gentle but firm, "you have every right to be hurt and angry. What your dad did was cruel, especially the timing. But before you do anything, take a breath. Make sure whatever you do next comes from a place of self-respect, not just anger." Her words gave me pause. Was I planning to assert my rights, or was I simply plotting revenge? "What would you do?" I asked her. "I'm not you," she replied, "and I don't have your history with your family, but I know you, Sarah. Despite everything, you still love them. Make sure whatever you do next is something you can live with afterward." After we hung up, I forced myself to step back from the emotional precipice. Taylor was right. I needed to approach this strategically, not just reactively. The next morning, with a clearer head, I began researching my legal rights as the mortgage holder. I learned that while I didn't own the house outright, my position gave me significant leverage. Dad couldn't sell the house without satisfying the mortgage, which would require either paying it off entirely or getting me to agree to a transfer to the new owners. I had the power to block any sale that didn't meet my approval. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to consult with a real estate attorney to understand all my options. The consultation confirmed what I'd already discovered and added some interesting possibilities I hadn't considered. You could potentially purchase the property yourself, the attorney suggested. Since you already hold the mortgage, you'd essentially be converting your loan interest into equity ownership. The idea held appeal. I could preserve our family, home, and its memories without depending on Dad's goodwill. As I was processing these options, another betrayal blindsided me. While checking some financial news, I decided to look at local real estate listings out of curiosity. There, already online, was our family home, listed for sale at an ambitious price with Vanessa herself as the agent. The description made no mention of the property's true financial situation, instead emphasizing its potential for development and desirable location. They hadn't even waited for me to find new housing before listing the property I was paying for. The listing included photos taken recently without my knowledge, photos showing the renovations that had erased so much of Mom's touch from the home. Seeing our family home advertised like any other commodity solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about principles and justice. I spent the next week developing a comprehensive plan. I would attend the upcoming family dinner that Sunday, an obligation I usually dreaded but now anticipated with newfound purpose. I would listen and observe, giving them the opportunity to be honest about their plans. Only if they continued their pattern of dismissal and deception would I reveal what I knew and the power I held. I prepared meticulously for all possible scenarios. I organized my documentation chronologically, made copies, and placed everything in a professional portfolio. I rehearsed what I would say, practicing a tone that was firm but not emotional, authoritative but not vindictive. I even consulted with my therapist, a relationship I'd begun a year ago to deal with my family issues but had never disclosed to my father or siblings. Remember that your goal isn't to hurt them back, Dr. Winters cautioned during our emergency session. Your goal is to establish healthy boundaries and require respect. The difference is crucial for your own healing. By the time Sunday arrived, I had transformed from the devastated birthday girl to a woman with a clear purpose. I dressed carefully in a sleek black pantsuit that I normally reserved for important client meetings. Professional, powerful, but not threatening. I styled my hair in a simple updo, applied minimal makeup, and wore my mother's small pearl earrings as a private reminder of why this mattered so much. As I drove to the family home, I felt a strange sense of calm. For years, I had approached family gatherings with a mixture of hope and dread, always eager for connection, but braced for disappointment. This time was different. This time, I wasn't coming as the perpetual people-pleaser hoping for scraps of affection. I was coming as Sarah Mitchell, financial professional, mortgage holder, and woman who had finally found her voice. Whatever happened, tonight our family dynamic would never be the same. And for the first time in years, that thought didn't fill me with fear, but with a tentative sense of freedom. The Sunday family dinner that would change everything began like dozens before it. I arrived exactly on time, neither early enough to seem eager nor late enough to seem disrespectful. The house looked different each time I visited. Another plant of Mom's replaced, another wall painted in Vanessa's preferred neutral tones, another piece of family history tucked away in favor of modern, impersonal decor. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key, a small acknowledgement that I no longer felt this was truly my home. Amy answered, her expression flickering with guilt when she saw me. "Sarah, you came. I wasn't sure you would after—" She trailed off, unable to directly reference the eviction notice delivered on my birthday just days ago. "Of course I came," I replied with a calm smile. "We need to discuss the transition, right?" My portfolio was tucked under my arm, innocuous enough that no one would question it. Inside, the smell of catered Italian food filled the air. Vanessa didn't cook, Another break from tradition in a house where mom's home-cooked meals had once been the centerpiece of family gatherings. Dad and Vanessa were in the living room, glasses of wine already in hand. Mark was setting the table, looking uncomfortable when he spotted me. "Sarah?" Dad acknowledged with a nod, not bothering to stand. "Glad you could make it. We have a lot to discuss." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Drink?" I opened a lovely Cabernet. I declined politely. I needed absolute clarity tonight. Dinner proceeded with excruciating small talk. The elephant in the room, my impending eviction and their plans to sell our family home, remained unaddressed as we discussed the weather, Mark's final exams, and Amy's internship. Finally, as the catered tiramisu was being distributed, Dad cleared his throat. "So, Sarah, have you started looking at apartments yet? I have some colleagues who might know of vacancies in good areas." The casual way he referenced upending my life made something harden inside me. "Actually," I replied, keeping my voice conversational, "I wanted to discuss the broader plan first. I understand you're planning to sell the house?" Dad and Vanessa exchanged a quick glance. "Yes," Vanessa answered before Dad could speak. "We've already had significant interest. It's a seller's market right now." Her tone was smug, almost triumphant. "I noticed," I said mildly. "I saw the listing online, very comprehensive, though I was surprised to see it listed before anyone discussed it with me." Dad frowned. "Sarah, while I appreciate your attachment to the house, this is a financial decision. The money from the sale will fund Vanessa's new business and provide a nest egg for all our futures." The way he said "our futures" made it clear he wasn't including me in that calculation. I nodded thoughtfully. "And the timeline? When are you hoping to close?" "We already have a showing scheduled for next weekend," Vanessa interjected eagerly. "If all goes well, we could be looking at closing within 45 days. Dad added, "Which is why we need you to vacate the apartment promptly. Mark will need somewhere to stay when he returns, and the new owners may want a quick possession date for the main house." "I see," I said, taking a sip of water. "And may I ask what arrangements you've made regarding the mortgage?" The question hung in the air. Dad looked momentarily confused. "The mortgage will be paid off from the proceeds of the sale, of course." "Interesting," I murmured. "And have you confirmed the current status of the mortgage? The payoff amount? Any prepayment penalties?" Dad's confusion deepened. "The real estate agent handles those details." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "Those are just formalities, Sarah. I have everything under control." It was time. I reached for my portfolio and removed the mortgage documentation, placing it neatly on the table beside my dessert plate. "Actually, I think there might be some important details you've overlooked." I slid the papers toward my father. 6 months ago, when the bank was about to foreclose on this house because the mortgage was 7 months behind, not the 3 you told me about, I took action to save our family home. Dad's face paled as he stared at the documents. "What are you talking about? The bank restructured our loan. They created a special program for business owners." I shook my head slowly. "There was no special program, Dad. That was the story I created so you wouldn't feel like you needed my help. In reality, I transferred the mortgage into my name. I used my savings to bring the loan current. I've been making the payments ever since." The silence that followed was absolute. Vanessa snatched the papers from Dad's limp hands, her eyes widening as she scanned them. "This can't be legal," she finally sputtered. "I would have known. My contacts at the bank would have told me." "Your contacts may not have had access to the information," I explained calmly. "The arrangement was handled confidentially at my request to protect Dad's dignity." I turned to my father, whose face had gone from pale to gray. "I never intended to use this as leverage. I genuinely wanted to help preserve our family home, Mom's memory, everything this place represents. But you've made it clear that those things don't matter to you anymore." Mark and Amy were staring at me with expressions that mingled shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like respect. "So what does this mean?" Mark finally asked. "It means," I said, maintaining my professional tone, "that this house cannot be sold without my approval. As the mortgage holder, I have a legal interest in the property that must be satisfied before any transfer of ownership can occur." Vanessa's composure cracked entirely. You sneaky little... You've been planning this all along, haven't you? Waiting for the perfect moment to undermine everything. I met her gaze steadily. No, Vanessa. I've been waiting for my family to remember that I'm part of it. I've been waiting to be included in major decisions, to be treated with basic respect, to not be handed an eviction notice on my birthday without a second thought. I gathered my documents and stood. I'll leave you all to discuss this new information. But you should know, I won't approve any sale of this house without fair consideration of its emotional value to our family, and I certainly won't be vacating my apartment in 30 days. As I walked toward the door, Dad finally found his voice. Sarah, wait, we need to discuss this reasonably. I paused, turning back with a small, sad smile. That's all I've ever wanted, Dad. When you're ready for a reasonable discussion where I'm treated as an equal member of this family, you know where to find me. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I felt lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened next would be challenging, possibly messy, but for the first time since Mom died, I wasn't just reacting to my family's demands and disappointments. I was standing up for my worth, my contributions, and my right to be respected. The drive home was strangely peaceful. I had done what I needed to do. The ball was now in their court. The fallout from my revelation was swift and chaotic. I had barely reached my apartment when my phone began ringing. First Amy, then Mark, then repeated calls from Dad that I let go to voicemail. I needed space to process what had just happened, to stand firm in my decision before being pulled back into the family vortex. Dad's voicemails progressed from commanding, "Call me immediately, we need to fix this misunderstanding," to threatening, "If you think you can hold this family hostage with your financial games, you're making a serious mistake," to finally, around midnight, something approaching desperate. "Sarah, please. We need to talk about this like adults." I listened to each message but waited until the following morning to respond, sending a simple text. "I'm available to meet at my apartment this evening at 7. Please come prepared for a productive discussion." The response was immediate. "We'll be there." The "we" didn't escape my notice. A family meeting had been called, and I was finally at the center rather than the periphery. I spent the day preparing, both practically and emotionally. I cleared my schedule at work, explaining to my understanding boss that I had a family emergency. I organized additional documentation that might be needed and called my real estate attorney for a quick refresher on my rights and responsibilities. Most importantly, I mentally rehearsed staying calm and focused regardless of what tactics my family might employ. At precisely 7, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find not just Dad, but Vanessa, Mark, and Amy crowded in the hallway. Their expressions ranged from my father's barely contained anger to Amy's obvious distress. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside. My small living room had been arranged for this meeting, with enough seating for everyone and a coffee table, cleared for documents. As they filed in, I noticed Vanessa carrying a leather portfolio similar to mine from the previous night, battle preparations, apparently. Once everyone was seated, an uncomfortable silence fell. I waited, letting them make the first move. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Sarah, I think you owe us an explanation for your deception." The accusation might have triggered my people-pleasing instincts in the past, sending me into defensive justifications. Instead, I met his gaze calmly. "I don't see it as deception, Dad. I saw a problem. Our family home was about to be foreclosed upon, and I solved it discreetly to protect your pride. The only reason it's coming to light now is because you're trying to sell a house that I've been paying for without even consulting me." Dad's face flushed. "The house is in my name. The deed has been in my name since before you were born. Whatever arrangement you made with the bank doesn't change ownership." My attorney had prepared me for this argument. "You're right that the deed is in your name," I acknowledged, "but the mortgage is in mine. Legally, that means you can't sell the property without satisfying the mortgage first, which would require either paying it off entirely or getting my approval to transfer it to new owners." Vanessa jumped in, her voice sharp. "This is manipulative and possibly fraudulent. You took advantage of your father during a vulnerable financial time." I raised an eyebrow. "Fraudulent?" Every document was legally executed with full disclosure to the bank. The only deception was the story about a special bank program, which I created to spare Dad's feelings. I turned back to my father. Would you have accepted my help if I'd been honest about taking over the mortgage? His silence was answer enough. Mark, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. Sarah, I get why you did it. But why spring this on us now when Dad and Vanessa have already made plans based on selling the house? It was a fair question, asked without accusation. I never intended to spring anything on anyone, I explained. I was content to keep quietly making the payments, keeping our family home safe. What changed was learning, on my birthday, no less, that I was being evicted from my apartment, and that the house I've been paying for was being sold without anyone even mentioning it to me. Amy winced at this, looking down at her hands. When you put it that way, she murmured. Vanessa wasn't backing down. This is emotional blackmail. You're using financial leverage to force your way into decisions that aren't yours to make. I met her hostile gaze directly. And you've been using emotional leverage to gradually push me out of my own family for 2 years. Which is worse? The room fell silent. Dad broke it with a different approach, his voice suddenly conciliatory. Sarah, honey, I understand you feel left out sometimes. But this business venture is important to Vanessa, to our future together. Surely we can come to some arrangement that satisfies everyone. The sudden shift to tenderness might have swayed me once, but I recognize the tactic now. I'm open to arrangements that respect my position, both financial and familial, I replied evenly. What exactly are you proposing? Dad glanced at Vanessa, who opened her portfolio and extracted a document. We've prepared an offer, she said. All business now. We'll repay your mortgage contributions to date plus 10% interest in exchange for your agreement to transfer the mortgage to the new buyers. I accepted the document and scanned it quickly. The numbers were far below what would be fair compensation, not just for the payments I'd made, but for saving the house from foreclosure in the first place. This isn't adequate, I said simply, setting it aside. And it doesn't address the fundamental issue. I'm not being treated as a full member of this family whose input matters. Frustration flashed across Dad's face. What do you want, Sarah? To stop the sale completely? To punish us? What's your end game here? It was the question I'd been waiting for, the one that would allow me to lay out my terms clearly. I want 3 things, I said calmly. First, I want acknowledgement of my contributions to this family over the years, financial and otherwise. Second, I want to be included in major family decisions going forward, treated as an equal rather than an afterthought. And third, I want a fair financial arrangement regarding the house that recognizes my investment in preserving it. The demands hung in the air. Mark was the first to respond. That seems reasonable to me, he said quietly. Sarah has always been there for us, Dad. For all of us. His support caught me by surprise, a warm counterpoint to the tension. Vanessa's expression had turned calculating. What exactly would a fair financial arrangement look like to you? Before I could answer, Dad interrupted, his patience finally snapping. This is ridiculous. You think because you went behind my back with some banking trick you can dictate terms to me, in my own house? He stood abruptly. I won't be manipulated by my own daughter. Come on, Vanessa. We're leaving. Vanessa hesitated, clearly reluctant to abandon negotiations that might save her business plans. Robert, maybe we should hear her out. Now, Vanessa, he insisted, already moving toward the door. She gathered her documents with obvious reluctance and followed him. At the door, Dad turned back. This isn't over, Sarah. If you think you can hold our family hostage this way, you're sadly mistaken. After they left, an awkward silence fell. Mark and Amy remained seated, looking uncertain. You guys can go too, I said softly. I know this puts you in a difficult position. Mark shook his head. Actually, I'd like to stay and talk if that's okay. There's a lot I didn't know about what you've done for us over the years. Amy nodded in agreement. Me too. I feel like I've been missing something important. For the next 2 hours, we had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. I explained the sacrifices I'd made after Mom died, not to make them feel guilty, but to help them understand why the family home meant so much to me. They shared their perspectives on how Dad and Vanessa's relationship had changed the family dynamic. By the time they left, something had shifted between us. A new understanding, perhaps even the beginning of a true adult-sibling relationship based on mutual respect rather than old family patterns. As I closed the door behind them, I felt both drained and strangely invigorated. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. The family structure that had been dysfunctional for so long was finally being forced to change. Whether that change would ultimately heal us or break us apart remained to be seen, but at least now we were dealing with reality instead of pretense. And for the first time in years, I wasn't facing it alone. The following week passed in an uneasy stalemate. Dad stopped calling after his dramatic exit from my apartment, apparently committed to freezing me out until I capitulated. Vanessa, however, was more practical. She called twice with revised offers, each slightly better than the last but still not acknowledging the emotional components of my demands. I maintained my position calmly but firmly. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mark and Amy blossomed in unexpected ways. We met for coffee without our father's knowledge, sharing stories and rebuilding connections that had been strained by years of family dysfunction. Mark revealed that he had never intended to move into my apartment. Dad and Vanessa had made that plan without consulting him. I already signed a lease with roommates near campus for my graduate studies, he confessed. When I told Dad, he was furious, said the plans had already been made and I was being ungrateful. Another manipulation exposed. 10 days after our confrontation, I took decisive action. Working with my attorney, I prepared a formal notice to my father as the property owner, stating that as the mortgage holder, I was requiring an inspection of the property to ensure its condition was being maintained in accordance with the terms of the mortgage. The letter also included a reminder that the family had 60 days, not the 30 they had given me, to vacate if they still intended to sell the property. The certified letter was delivered on a Tuesday. By Tuesday evening, my father was at my door, his face a storm of emotion. 60 days? An inspection? What game are you playing, Sarah? I invited him in calmly. It's not a game, Dad. It's business. Isn't that what you told me when you delivered my eviction notice? Business is business? He paced my small living room like a caged animal. This is different. This is our home. Yes, I agreed quietly. It is our home, not just your home, not Vanessa's cash cow. Our family home. The home Mom loved. The home where I helped raise Mark and Amy after she died. The home I saved from foreclosure when you couldn't make the payments. My words stopped his pacing. For perhaps the first time, he really looked at me. Not as his dutiful daughter, but as a woman standing her ground. What do you want from me, Sarah? He asked, his voice suddenly tired. I want you to understand what you've been doing to me for years, I replied honestly. Sidelining me. Taking my contributions for granted. Making major decisions that affect me without even consulting me. And I want it to stop. He sank onto my couch, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. I never meant to hurt you, he said, and for once I believed he was being sincere. After your mother died, you were so capable, so strong. You just handled everything. I guess I started to think you didn't need anything from me. The admission cracked something open between us. I did need you, Dad. I still do. Not to solve my problems or manage my life, but to see me. To value me as much as you value Mark and Amy. To include me in the family you're so busy building with Vanessa. He was quiet for a long moment. The house really means that much to you? I nodded. It's the last place Mom was happy. It's where she taught me to bake and garden. It's where she made me promise to look after everyone. Every time Vanessa removes another trace of her, it feels like losing her all over again. Understanding dawned slowly in his eyes. I didn't realize. We talked for hours that night, having the first real conversation we'd had since Mom died. It wasn't perfect. Years of patterns couldn't be undone in one evening, but it was a start. By the time he left, we had the outline of a compromise. The house wouldn't be sold immediately. Instead, we would take 6 months to consider alternatives. including the possibility of me buying out his share of the equity. More importantly, I would be included in all family discussions about the property going forward. The next person to cave was Vanessa. With the house sale delayed, her business plans were in jeopardy. She arrived at my office unannounced one afternoon, all conciliatory smiles and calculated charm. "Sarah, I think we got off on the wrong foot," she began after settling into the chair across from my desk. "I never meant to come between you and your father." Her insincerity was transparent, but I remained professional. "What can I do for you today, Vanessa?" She cut to the chase. "I need capital for my business. The house sale was supposed to provide that. Since you've blocked that path, I'm wondering if you might be interested in becoming an investor instead. The proposal might have been laughable if it weren't so predictable." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I replied. "My financial commitments are already allocated elsewhere." Her friendly facade cracked slightly. "This vendetta against me isn't helping anyone, Sarah. Your father and I are building a future together. Don't you want him to be happy?" It was the wrong approach. "My father's happiness has been my concern since I was 16 years old," I said evenly, "which is why I saved the house he nearly lost. I'm not against his happiness. I'm against being treated as disposable by my own family." Vanessa left in a huff, but the encounter confirmed what I had suspected. Her attachment to my father was contingent on his financial usefulness. That suspicion was confirmed 3 weeks later when Mark called with news. "Sarah, you won't believe this. Vanessa moved out last night, packed her things, and left while Dad was at a client dinner." The news shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. "Did she say why?" "Dad said they had a huge fight about money. Apparently, she's been approached by another real estate developer, some guy she used to date. When Dad couldn't guarantee funds for her business, she jumped ship." While I didn't feel any joy in my father's pain, the development confirmed the wisdom of standing my ground. As the 60-day mark approached, another shift occurred. Dad called to ask if we could meet at the family home to discuss options. When I arrived, I found him alone, sitting at the kitchen table with boxes of old family photos spread out before him. "I found these in the attic," he explained. "Your mother was always the one who organized the photos. After she died, I just couldn't look at them anymore." We spent the afternoon going through memories, and by evening we had reached a new understanding. Dad would move into a smaller place, one better suited to his current needs. I would take over the family home, buying out his equity over time. The official transition took place exactly 60 days after I had delivered my notice. I stood in the driveway watching as Dad loaded the last of his essential belongings into his car. The rest would be moved gradually as he settled into his new condominium. "You know," he said, closing the trunk, "your mother would be proud of you. Not just for saving the house, but for standing up for yourself. She always said you had her backbone." The words meant more to me than he could know. "I'll take good care of it," I promised. "And you're always welcome here, Dad. This will always be your home, too." As he drove away, I turned to face the house. My house now. The place where my journey had begun and where, in an unexpected way, it was beginning again. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were moving in the right direction, not just as individuals, but as a family. 1 year after the birthday that changed everything, I stood in the kitchen of the family home, my home now, putting the finishing touches on a cake. Not just any cake, but Mom's special recipe, the one she'd made for every family celebration when I was growing up. The house around me had undergone a transformation, but unlike Vanessa's cold modernization, my changes had been made with reverence for the past while still embracing the future. Mom's garden had been restored and expanded, blooming with her favorite flowers alongside new varieties I'd chosen. Her kitchen remained largely untouched, though I'd upgraded the appliances. Throughout the house, I'd found a balance between preserving memories and creating new ones. The mortgage was fully in my name now, with a legal agreement establishing my ownership of the property. Dad had moved into a condominium closer to his office, a change that seemed to reinvigorate him. Professionally, without Vanessa's influence pushing him toward retirement and her real estate ambitions, he'd refocused on his accounting practice, even bringing in a younger partner to eventually take over. Our relationship remained a work in progress. Some weeks were better than others. Old patterns occasionally resurfaced, requiring patient correction, but the baseline had fundamentally changed. He consulted me about important decisions. He acknowledged my contributions. Most importantly, he saw me, not just as his capable daughter who would handle everything, but as a person with my own needs and feelings. The sound of the doorbell pulled me from my thoughts. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer. It smiling at the sight of Taylor standing on the porch with a bottle of champagne. "Happy rebirth day," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly before stepping inside. I'd decided to reclaim my birthday this year, transforming it from a day of painful memories into a celebration of new beginnings. Taylor had enthusiastically supported the idea, helping me plan what we were calling my rebirth party. "The place looks amazing," she said, looking around appreciatively. "Every time I visit, you've made another improvement." "Small steps," I agreed, "just like everything else this year." More guests arrived, colleagues from work, friends I'd reconnected with, and neighbors I'd gotten to know since taking ownership of the house. Mark came with his girlfriend, both of them carrying gifts despite my no-presents request. Amy arrived shortly after, having driven in from her new job in a neighboring city. The most surprising arrival came an hour into the party. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Dad standing somewhat awkwardly on the porch, holding a small package wrapped in blue paper, the color Mom had always used for my birthday gifts. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said hesitantly. "You're not intruding at all," I assured him, stepping aside to let him in. "I'm glad you came." He handed me the package. "It's not much, but it made me think of you." Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Mom and me in the garden, both of us laughing as we planted tulip bulbs. I must have been about 10 years old. "Where did you find this?" I asked, touching the image gently. "In one of your mother's old albums. I've been going through them lately, trying to, I don't know, reconnect with memories I pushed away for too long." The simple admission represented such growth for him that I felt my eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, Dad. It's perfect." The party continued around us, warm and lively. When it came time to cut the cake, I found myself surrounded by people who truly saw and valued me. As I blew out the 33 candles, I made a silent wish not for anything I needed, but in gratitude for what I'd already gained. The strength to stand up for myself, the wisdom to know my own worth, and the courage to reshape relationships that had been damaged by years of imbalance. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and I was cleaning up the last of the party debris, I found myself alone in the kitchen, looking out at Mom's garden in the moonlight. The journey of the past year had been painful at times, but ultimately, healing. I'd learned that family isn't defined by blood or property, but by mutual respect and love. I'd discovered that being a good daughter didn't mean sacrificing my own needs, and that true strength sometimes means drawing boundaries with those we love most. Most importantly, I'd realized that the promise I made to my mother all those years ago, to take care of the family, included taking care of myself too. Standing in the quiet kitchen where Mom had once taught me to bake, I felt her presence more strongly than I had in years. "I kept my promise, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "Just not in the way I thought I would." The house creaked gently. In response, a familiar sound that had frightened me as a child until Mom explained that old houses talk to us in their own language. "They're just telling their stories," she'd said. This house had many stories, some painful, some joyful, all part of what made it home. And now, after nearly losing it and then fighting to reclaim it, I was finally writing my own chapters within its walls. Not as the family caretaker who was taken for granted, but as a woman who had learned the hard way that sometimes you have to fight for your place in the world, even when that fight is with the people who should have been protecting your place, all along. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity, or found yourself needing to draw firm boundaries with loved ones who couldn't see your worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Like this video if you've ever had to make the difficult choice between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones that finally set us free.